Hey guys, Trent at Black Horse Ranch, and we've got an area of fencing here we're going to be working on. So this is going to be a how-to video on high tensile fence. This is how we do it here at Black Horse Ranch. It's not the only way to do it, so just keep that in mind, but this is how we found that we like doing it. And it may change over the years, but it is what it is. So if you haven't seen our other high tensile fence videos, we've got one that is why you would choose high tensile fence over barbed wire, say. And we've got another one that was actually right before the flood. We had a flood that took out a whole bunch of our fence. We did a video that was in the spring to see how we weathered our first spring. So I'll link to those videos, and you can check those out if you haven't seen those before. But this is assuming you've chosen to do a high tensile fence, and so we're gonna show you how we do it, and hopefully you get some good information out of it. So this post right here is the first end post that was taken out from the flood. So right behind me is the other side of a gate. This was a gate right here. You can see the gate leaning up against the fence there. We picked this point and we moved it a little bit from where it was before, just so we could avoid the old hole. But basically, so we started here at the end, and then we set our corner positions. Every place the fence transitions direction, we set our corner positions. And so that's what we work on first. We get our end points in our corner positions, and then we pound those posts first. And like I've said in my other videos, we use a post pounder. In ground that's too hard to pound in, we've got a lot of rocky ground along the river. We do a pilot auger. So we don't auger the hole out bigger than the post. It's actually smaller than the post, and then we pound the post into the hole. So there's still tension on the post. And we opted to do post pounding because the posts that are pounded have a better pull out grab than posts that are augered and then backfilled. I think over time, after, that's an initial thing, but over time, if you auger your posts and you backfill and pack it, that can be just as good as long as you don't have any, stresses on them. The problem with high tensile is as soon as you put your wire on and you tighten it, you've got instant stress. So we like the idea of augering. If you're gonna do concrete posts, you're in for big expense and a lot of work. And potentially your posts will rot faster. And if you haven't disturbed your ground, a pounded post will actually stand up just as good as a concreted post, depending, assuming you do a hole that's just a little bit bigger than your post. If you do a whole footing, then the concrete, is gonna be a better option. So we've got about 55 acres that we fence. We've got probably 4 different pastures basically that we have fenced, or 2 of them we haven't done yet, but we've got 2 bigger ones. So and ours is a really long, narrow strip, and so doing it with that kind of a thing, we didn't want to be pouring that much concrete and mixing, and it's just a lot of expense. So, and it's easy to pull them out if you want to move them or replace them if they break. So that's kind of why we did that. So starting with the first post here, this will be the start of an H-frame and a gate. And so typically on an H-frame, we like to install the post so it's tilted against the pole of your fence. So both of your posts in your H-frame are tilted a little bit opposing your pole of your fence. So our fence is running this way. This is the start point. So ideally, we would have wanted this post to lean against that a little bit. So we ended up going in totally straight, like it looks really good from a level perspective. But we were trying to get it in a little bit crooked. With the post pounder, it's a little bit harder to nail those kinds of angles. Depending on what you hit in the ground, it'll move your post around and stuff. So anyway, this is what we got. These are 7.5 foot posts. We're just a hair over 4 feet above grade. So that gives us like 3 to 3.5 feet buried below the dirt. So that makes the post, really strong there. Another thing that we haven't done is we haven't put in the second post of our H-frame yet. So that post will come in when we do all of our intermediate posts. And the reason for that is that when you run your string line off your starting post to your corner, if your H-frame, your second post of your H-frame is in your field or out of your field a little bit, you're either gonna have staples pulled out from the tension of your wire, or you're gonna have the wire pushing on your post. So you wanna make sure you get that second leg of your H-frame nice and straight with your string line. So you can see this is a reused post. We gotta clip these old fence wires off of here, but we'll go through and show you everything you need to know on constructing a high tensile fence, and hopefully this is a helpful video for you. Let's go head on down there and take a look at the corner. All right guys, so here we have our corner posts, and this is a small angle transition going around this corner. You can kind of see on the road. So on a small angle like this, an H-frame doesn't do anything. It would just get pulled in with the pressure of the fence on the outside. So you don't want to waste your time doing a H-frame or a double H-frame on a corner like this. On a 90-degree corner, or probably anything close to 90 degrees, it's helpful, but on something this small, it doesn't help you at all. Just waste your time and waste your posts. So better off not worrying about an H-frame on a corner like this. So these posts are put in and they're leaning out, so the pressure of the fence is going to want to pull them back. And so rather than start in a straight up position and have the fence pull your posts in, you always want to start with the posts leaning to begin with, and hopefully they'll hold and they won't move at all. But if they do move, they're going to get closer to straight instead of leaning in. So that's kind of the idea here, similar to your first post on your H-frame. So the way that I do this typically is I'll make a corner point. This is where I want my transition point to be, and it's just wherever you choose based on your terrain. And I take my corner point and I line it up with my end post that I put in, and then I draw a straight line with marker paint on the ground, and then I turn around and I do the same thing at the next point. So I had to set something up. I didn't have posts there to look at, but I had to set up something in the grass so I could see where my next corner point was. And then I draw a straight line from this corner toward that corner. So I've got this open V basically right here. And then I take my 4-foot tape measure and I set the 2-foot mark right on the V, the point of the V, and I measure mark the end of the tape measure and 4 feet. So these posts are in a straight line, they're 4 feet apart, but they're on my V, on the sides of my V. Hopefully that makes sense. And I can maybe show you that later on because we haven't pounded all of our corners yet. So that's how I lay my corners out, and then we just make sure that they're tilted out. So you can do a curved corner. You know, if you put a post like every 10 feet, it really depends on how sharp your curve is. And then you would do the same thing. You would angle your posts out so that when the fence pulls on them, when you tighten it, it's pulling them in. So that's basically the idea of the corner. And so at each point along here, you can see further down there, we've got another corner. There's a post in the middle that didn't get wiped out by the flood. That hopefully lines up pretty good. We tried to incorporate it. But the next corner is there down beyond that tree that's hanging over the fence. So basically we've gone along, we started with an end, and we just set our corner points every place that the fence transitions a different angle. We've set up our corners. Okay guys, so we're gonna do this short section here, and I'll show you how to do the string line. So when you do your string line, I usually do a slip knot, and you want to make sure that your string comes off the correct side of your post. So we want our wire on this side of the post, and so I want my string to come off that side of the post. So I'm gonna set my thing up, my string here, so that when I tighten it, when I pull this way, it tightens, okay? That way it's always going to be on this side of the post. Now, you kind of have to figure out what works good for you, because these posts are leaning, and you don't want to put your string down too low at the bottom. You don't want to put it too high at the top, because all the posts in the between are going to be straight up and down. So if you put it too high at the top, then all your posts will be out further than they need to, and your wire on the inside will put pressure at the bottom. That's probably better than doing it the other way, but I like to do it at about yay high, and we don't get the level out on the field. If you were putting in a fence at your house or something, you might try to level all your posts with a level, but we just eyeball it to get them pretty much straight up and down when they're touching the string. So we'll go ahead and run this down to the start point, which is going to be an H-frame. So we'll see you down there. So on this post, generally speaking, on your high tensile, you want your animal pressure to push the wires up against your post. So I could put the string on the outside of the post, but basically then if my animals push on that string, the only thing, or I guess the wire, the only thing holding it to the post is the staples. So we don't want that. We want our animal pressure to be pushing the wires up against the post. So I'm going to put that on the inside, and then same when we set these posts. Even though we're going around the outside of the corner, it's a lot harder for the animals to push that wire off the post because it's tensioned. But in the middle, there's a lot more flex because you're not going around a corner. So all the intermediate posts between here and the corner are going to be on the outside of the field. The wire will be on the inside. So they won't, if you look down them, they won't exactly line up. They'll be like one post width off from your corner post, which is fine. So on this one, I just give it a couple of wraps on the post. And then when I get up to the top, if you just put your hand in the loop and you twist it around a couple times and put it over the top of your post and pull it tight, then that'll hold good enough to keep your string in the right spot. And then you're not tying a knot, you can easily just take that off the top. Okay, so this is the second part of our H-frame. So now that we have our string up, we know exactly where this is going to be in relation to our string. Now, if I accidentally set my post, come around to this side over here. If I accidentally set my post too far away, with, just guessing, eyeballing it, then when the only thing holding the wire onto this post is a staple. So this could potentially pop the staple off eventually, or vice versa. If I'm too far on this side, this tension, the wire pushing on here, will make this post tip eventually. So that's why you want to wait till you do your string line. Wait for your H-frame brace until you do your string line. The other thing that I'm doing here is we already cut our H-frame brace, which is laying over there on the ground, from the last time it was installed. And so we want to do a pretty specific dimension here. So normally we would make sure we're less than 8 feet. This one, we want to make sure we're less than 7 feet 9 inches. And now the critical thing about the H-frame is you actually want this to be, this distance across between the two members to be as long as possible. I mean, within reason. So we went 8 feet, 10 feet would be better. And all that does is it helps keep your end post from getting pulled out of the ground. So that's one key thing. I'll mention another key thing when we actually start stringing the wire. So I'm at 7 feet 9 inches here to the edge of the post, which is what our H-frame is. And then we're just going to eyeball level, and then I just want it to touch the string. Okay? And now that I have that in place, then we'll go ahead and pound that post there. Once this post is here, then we'll measure the distance between this post and the corner, and then we'll figure out our post spacing in the middle. So now that we've got that post pounded, we're gonna measure from the end of that post to the inside of that post, and we'll see what that dimension is. So the distance between these two posts is 64 feet, and we shoot for around 30 feet. So half of 64 is 32, so we're just gonna put one post in the middle of this section here. So that puts us at 32-foot spacing, and we try to stay under 35 and above 25, so we try to just work it how that works out the best. So we'll do 32 feet on this one and pound the next post. Okay guys, so this is a transition point right here where we're gonna put in the double posts, and I said I would show you this since we'd pounded a bunch of them before. But here's our mark on the ground, which I showed you before. So we have the two straight lines and basically our V that lines up with the previous position and the next position. And so then what I do is I get my tape measure out, and we want these posts 4 feet apart. So I put 2 feet in the V on the cross line, and then we mark 4 feet, and then the end of the tape measure. Okay, so that's our 2 points for our transition. All right guys, today we're gonna be working on putting in our first H-frame. And so I mentioned before that you see the wires on this post here, those are old from before the flood. So I'm just leaving them on in case one of them is in the right spot. But the first thing that we wanna do is mark our posts where the wires are going. And then that'll tell us kind of where we want to put our H-frame cross member. And now you don't want to put it too high because then that's more leverage to pull your in post out, but you don't want to put it too low because then you don't get the pullback against your fence. So, but what I like to do is I like to make sure that my H-frame is below the top strand. So on our fence we're about 42 inches to the top strand, I think. So below the top strand, but above the electrified strand that's right below it. I don't want it to interfere, and sometimes you can't avoid it, but I don't want it to interfere with the electrified strand, and I don't want it to be too high. So that's kind of what I shoot for. On this particular one, we have a slope right here just between these two H-frames, and so, or these two posts. So I may have that very issue where there's no way to keep my H-frame level. I might have to, have one up higher and one down lower, and both of them might interfere with each. It's more important to have your on this post, it's more important to have your H-frame between two strands, and then wherever it lands on the other one is where it lands, just because you don't want your H-frame cross member to interfere with your connection point on your post. If you have to go around your H-frame cross member to connect to your post, it's going to twist your post when you put tension on it. So you want to be above and below. So that's basically what'll drive it if you do have a slope between your two posts. So let me go grab my story pole, and we'll keep looking here. So this is my story pole, I guess you would call it. You can see it's basically laid out with all of our strands. So this one has 8, which is what we've done on all of the rest of our fence. On this particular run that we're putting in again, we're doing a 4-strand fence just because this field is prone to flooding, and so we're trying to give it a higher likelihood of survival. So we're gonna go 4 strands. So, but basically this story pole makes it so that you're consistently laying out your strands, and you don't have to get your tape measure out every time. So you can see we've got our marks on here. We're not using all of these this time. And I've also got a cross member here that's just loosely screwed onto the bottom. So, a lot of times when you're pounding posts, you'll get a depression right near your post, maybe even a few inches out from your post. And so that cross member helps you go across any uneven ground. If you've augered your posts, even if it's just a pilot hole, you'll want to make sure that your ground is flat, you're down to the original grade before you do your story pole. And that just, helps you get your strands more accurate off the ground. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark these. So on this particular one, I'm gonna skip our bottom two, and then I just use a permanent marker or Sharpie, but I'm gonna skip our bottom two, and we're gonna go this one, and then we're gonna go this one, and then we're gonna go this one, and this one. So those are the strands that we're doing this time, and we'll see how that works. If the cows get out, then we'll probably add some strands. On our 8-strand fence, we electrify 4, but we're just picking different ones, and then we've got 4 non-electrified strands. So we're basically putting in the same number, but we're just picking them in different spots. So let's get these things laid out. So you can see here, these are the insulators that we use. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. We basically take a short piece of wire and we crimp it on the post and run it through our insulator. And then this is the old piece of fencing that we cut off when we recovered this post. And then we just put a staple in. And one of the keys with high tensile fence, which you'll see when we do this later on, is we never staple the staples all the way tight up against the wire. We always leave a small gap so the wire can slide through there. It's no different on the corner. You want the corner to be able to shift a little bit as you're working through things. Obviously our story pole indicates none of these are in the right spot. And I just wanted to show you this because sometimes pulling out staples can be a little bit hard, but one of the things that I found to work pretty good is if you use a claw hammer instead of trying to get your claw in here. Usually they don't fit good unless you got a small hammer. Usually I hook them from the top like that, from the top or the bottom, and if they slide off, you just take another hammer and you tap it and it grabs on and they pull right out. So that's what I found to be the best on that. For now, I'm just going to take all these staples out and just let everything fall to the bottom. And with our 4-strand fence, I'm not going to put in the strand that goes above the H-frame cross member. So on this one, we don't have to worry about that. I just want to make sure my cross member is above this strand here. And then I think it'll actually hit, or it'll at least cross on this one over here. So we'll see where we end up. All right, guys, just some H-frame fundamentals. A couple of the key components you're gonna have on this side, you're gonna have a half pin. So let me grab a full pin. So these are the pins that you get for H-frames. We got these at kencove.com, so you can check there. So we just cut these in half basically. So so this is our end post. That's going to be the inside H-frame member there. So on your end post, you drill halfway into your post, and then your pin just sticks out. You don't go all the way through. And then on the other end, you're going to drill all the way through your post, and you're going to line it up with your other post, and you're going to leave an inch of pin sticking out on the far side of your post, and that's where your diagonal wire will attach. So basically, we'll set this pin at the height we want. We'll drill a hole in the end of our H-frame cross member. we'll set this one, we'll come over here, we'll get it level, and then if you need to, if you're just by yourself like I am here today, you can put a staple at your mark, and then your post can sit on that staple. And then you're going to drill through your post and into your cross member, and then your long pin is going to go in there. So you don't have to get the depth exactly right. There'll be pressure on this pin, so it's not going to move once you get your diagonal wire brace in. So if you go a little bit too deep, that's okay. You want to get it pretty close. And then once you get your cross member and your post drilled, then you're going to slide this in. Now if you try to drill them separately, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because your hole might not necessarily be lined up. You might get a little slightly different angle on your cross member than you have coming through your post, and it'll be a bear to get your pin in. So just keep that in mind. It's easier to drill them separate, but you're going to have a little bit more trouble doing it that way. So then the diagonal wire is going to go to the top of your inside post, and then it's going to come down as low as possible on your end post. The lower you go on your end post, the less likely you're going to have your post pulling up out of the ground. So, because you want, the higher you go up, the more movement you have on your post. And so then the idea is when you tighten that diagonal, you have an anchor point at the bottom of your post that doesn't move. The top of your post moves, but the point at the ground shouldn't move. So that's your point at the bottom. And then at the top over here, basically you're gonna pull from this solid anchor point, you're gonna pull the top of your other post in, which pushes pressure up against your H-frame here and keeps your post pushed against the tension of your fence. So that's kind of the basic idea of an H-frame. So I do a double wrap with wire on the H, on my diagonal, and then I'll show you how I do the staples, because you need your wire to be able to slide, kind of like I was saying before. You don't want it to be stapled tight, and if you do a single staple with you run the wire through your staple, then it has a little bit more friction on that single point. So I'll show you when we get to that point how I like to do those, or how I've learned to do those. So we'll keep moving on. So here I'm just setting my pin on top of the post just so I can get a good angle when I drill. And then I've got my strand here. That's a 4.5 inch diameter post. And so we want to be up in this neighborhood here. So I'm going to put a mark on this backside where I want to drill to, and then I'll grab my drill. So I've got this auger bit, so it's got a screw thread on the end and it pulls the bit through as you're drilling, and then it's long so that I can drill all the way through the far side. Now I just marked the wrong side of my post here, and you guys didn't say anything about it. This is the post that you don't drill all the way through. So I'm going to mark this side. Okay. And just remember, we only want to go halfway into our post. So I'm going to put a mark on my bit, or you can use electrical tape. The problem is you go deep with this bit, so if you tape it, it's going to fall off at some point. So this will wear off as well, but at least I can remark it. Okay, so I've got my angle. Okay, so this is for the short one. Okay, so your half pin goes here, and then next you would do the same depth, or even maybe a little bit deeper on your cross member. Now this particular cross member is being reused, so it's already got a hole in it, which makes it easy. So you just get it set on there since you're a one-man crew. Okay, and then you take your level. Doesn't have to be perfect. The more level, the better, but mostly just for aesthetics. You don't want it crooked because you lose your H-frame strength that way. So we're gonna lift and get that pin on as far as we can. This part's definitely easier with two people. Okay, so there's level right there. And I'm just gonna mark that. Then we'll set our cross member down. And then I'm just gonna put a staple here part way in. Then I'm just gonna put a staple in part way here, and I can set my H-frame on that temporarily while I drill the hole. Now these cross members will sag over time, so I like to crown them, which means you find the curve in them and you make the curve go up, and then that way when they sag over time they'll flatten out instead of sag. This one is pretty straight, so okay, and with that H-frame in there, we'll try to hit, this one's already got a hole in it, we'll try to hit it. We got pretty close. Okay. Then you take your long pin, push that through, and then tap it till you got about an inch hanging out. So that's what it'll look like then when you're done there. And so I also just wanted to point out too that I do have a small gap here. Now normally your posts aren't going to be perfect. This H-frame was already cut, so we tried to, when we pounded the post, we tried to make it perfect, but obviously, you know, that doesn't always work. But if you have a little bit of a gap, when you tighten your diagonal, that'll actually pull that in on this side. So it's not really that big of a deal to worry about. If it's a huge gap, then you might want to try putting in a different H-frame. I did have one where I had to buy a 10-foot cross member. These ones are 8. So it happens. Usually I bring a chainsaw out with me to cut these. That just buzzes them off real fast. So I'll set up the 2 H-frame posts, measure the distance, and I'll try to make sure it's shorter when I put the post in than my horizontal member. I try to make it as close as possible to 8 feet in this case. Then I'll cut it and get it in there, and cutting it a little bit long is fine because then it puts a little pressure on your post. So like I was saying before, you can see the slope on the ground. So these posts are buried the same depth, but you can see how much there is above the H-frame on that one, the post sticking up, compared to this one. So the ground underneath slopes. So this is just what we got to deal with on this one. So I'll get my story pole and I'll mark this post on the opposite side, and then we'll get our cross member put in, or our diagonal wire. Okay guys, this is the end post, and I just wanted to show you how I do the staple at the bottom. I thought I would just show you at the top, just so you can see it. It'll be buried in the grass kind of down there. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a fencing staple and I'm going to put it in flat. Okay, so our diagonal wire, so imagine this is the bottom of the post. Our diagonal wire is going to come in and it's going to go underneath this flat staple and back up. Okay, and obviously I'm going to put that on the end of the post. And then, so I'm going to pound that in so it's sticking out probably a 1/2 inch. Okay, and then once I have the wire run and everything's tightened up and everything, I'll come back in with another staple and I'll go over the top of this one to hold the wire in place. So this is your wire guide, and it gives you basically 2 points for the wire to slide across instead of 1. If I were to just put a staple in like this and run the wire between, then I would have a single point of friction right there, and it doesn't allow the wire to move as much in this diagonal application, because unlike the rest of the fence, there's actually pressure on the bottom of that staple. So if we do it flat and there's pressure on the bottom, it's got 2 points to ride on. It's less of a pinch point. It keeps your wire from, I guess, bending too much. Keeps it a smoother transition basically. So that'll be at the bottom of this post. We'll have the flat wire, or the flat staple, run our wire underneath it, so it'll be 2 strands. And then when we run our wire, we want to make sure we don't have any crisscrosses on the post. So you want one over the top of the other all the way around the post. If they crisscross in the open air between posts, that's fine. But you just don't want that to be on the post, because that'll pinch your wire, and again, it won't let it slide when you're trying to tighten it. Okay? And then on this end with the long pin, so this is not the end post, your diagonal wire comes up and over the top of this pin. So that holds this pin in tight when you tighten it. So that pin's not going to slide even if you drill your hole a little bit too deep. But you want about 1 inch sticking out. So this is your riding point for your wire on this side, and it actually is at the top. And then it's the double staple on the end post that your diagonal will run across. So let's go ahead and put those in. This is a roofing hammer, and I don't always use necessarily a roofing hammer. I should have brought a claw hammer today because I have all these old staples in the post, but the waffle head, whatever hammer you use, the waffle head makes a big difference when you're driving fencing staples, because they're so round and smooth on the top. It slips off really easy, and it's harder to get them to drive in straight. So I like to use a waffle head, just FYI, but to each his own. So again, on this bottom staple of the diagonal, you want to go as low as you can. You don't necessarily want to bury your wire in the ground, because it'll corrode faster that way. Okay. And then if you have trouble, you can go ahead and put your second staple in and run your wire through it. Sometimes when you're trying to put the diagonal wire on, it pops off of this staple all the time and gets frustrating. So if you want to, you can go ahead and run the second staple to run your wire through. So we're going to go ahead and start tensioning this. We got our tensioner on here. I've got it hooked on my bottom side over there and my top over there, and right now it's too loose to try to make sure the wires aren't overlapping, so I'm going to get it a bit tighter, and then we'll start looking at those wires and make sure they're not crisscrossing. Okay, so you can kind of see this one that I'm tightening has a lot less slack in it than this, right? So that's what I'm talking about. So we want to grab that, give it a pull, get our wire wrapped in the right spot, and now I'm going to check to make sure we're not twisted. Okay, that side looks good. That side also looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and keep tension on this one. Okay, so I just put a little bit of preload on it, and I've closed that gap at the other side. And the other thing that I have learned is to make sure that you put your tensioner on the opposite side from where your wire is. So in our case, the fence wire is going to be on the inside. So the tensioner I'm putting on the outside. And it's pretty easy to make it run into one of your wires. So we just try to put it on the opposite side. And I haven't done that on every case, but I've learned that it's pretty important. So that's where we'll leave this one. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll start running some wire. I've got another H-frame to do before that, but I'll bring you back when I start running wire. All right, guys, so this is our longest stretch of fence. And what we like to do is we like to count the spaces between the posts. So if you look right over here at the corner where we have those two posts 4 feet apart, that doesn't count. That counts as one post, basically. So we're gonna count spaces between the posts, and we put our tensioners as close to halfway as possible. So this particular spot right here happened to be 18 spaces between each end. So this is the 18th space. And this is where we put our tensioners, right here. So in each section of fence that you have between H-frames, you're gonna want one tensioner that's connected to a spring. And the springs have lines that are etched or engraved or stamped on the, there's two lines that are stamped so that when you tension this, the spring gets tight, and when it ends up between those two lines, you have the right fence tension. And then you just go by feel and you check all your other ones to make sure they feel about the same. It's not an exact science. Or if you wanted to, you could put a spring on every wire, but that's just overkill. And the spring tension just needs to be approximate. Plus these tend to, if your fence loses its tension from the post moving or whatever a little bit, the springs tend to sag more and they'll end up touching another wire. So, you know, you always try to put these where if they sag down, they're not going to touch a hot wire. Or in this case, on this particular fence, we're making all 4 strands hot, so it doesn't really matter for us. But we're going to do it on the next strand since it's the biggest gap between wires, just so it doesn't sag down and hit the next wire down. And then what we like to do, if you look right down here, we've got our Lazy Susan wire dispenser, and I wouldn't even try it without one of those. That's going to make your job a whole lot easier. And so we start in the middle right here, and we pull the wire each direction, and then we staple it to the posts after that. So let me just walk through the correct procedure. So we pull the wire down to one end from the middle, we connect it at the far end, and then if you've got a hot wire, if it's a hot wire that you're running, you have to run your insulating tubes down it. So in this case, we're going to count how many posts we have between here and the end, and we're going to pull all of our insulating tubes down the wire, and then we're going to staple it. And we've tried it a bunch of different ways. We've tried putting the staples part way in, pulling the wire through the staples. We've tried all kinds of stuff like that, and this just works way faster, we think. If you pull the whole wire, pull all the tubes, and then staple each post after that, and then come back to the middle and put your tensioner on and hook your other end on and tighten her up. So that's pretty much the whole high tensile fence installation. So you've seen the H-frame part, you've seen corners. Should be pretty self-explanatory with the insulating tubes. I don't remember if I showed them or not, but that's one of the tubes. I think I showed them. They have the little metal piece inside to keep the wire from rubbing through all the way. And we just cut them a little bit wider than your post, because with the high voltage wire, if your post is wet, it will arc. It can arc up to like a ½ inch or more, just depending on resistance and how good your post is grounded. Okay guys, so you'll have to forgive my voice, I got a bit of a cold. But I wanted to leave you with a few tips and tricks to finish off this video. A few of the things that we didn't talk about. We'll use this section of fence that's already installed here, and I'll run you through some things. So the first thing I wanted to say was when you're doing your insulators, what I usually do is I do a template. So there's a piece of wire that wraps around the post and goes through the insulator, and then I've got 2 crimps, right? So this one, the crimps are on the opposite side. So this is basically a straight wire that's bent around the post, and then it has a sharp bend that goes through the insulator. And so before I do a post, or even I might do it for a whole run of fence, I take the piece of wire, I get one set up, and then I just clip all of them, and I get them all ready. So I've got all of my insulator attachments made ahead of time. We didn't talk about crimping in the previous videos, but these are the crimps we use. So they're crimp sleeves for smooth wire fence, and you just got to make sure you get the right size for whatever wire you're using. And these are the crimpers. They look like bolt cutters. And this particular set of crimps has different sizes for different size wire and crimps. So just make sure you're using the right one for your application. And it takes a little bit of getting used to trying to get the crimp in there and get it set. But what I usually find to be useful is when you open up the crimps and you get your crimp on there, once you get it in the spot that you want, centered in your crimps, I usually do a slight tilt, and that holds your crimp in there because you got your wire going through it, and it keeps it from sliding. And then you can, once you get it squoze down a little bit, it stays pretty good. Okay, so that's those. You can see how the insulators are installed there. This is also an example of how to wire between your hot strands. So in this particular case, this is a hot wire, this is a hot wire, and then we got another one at the bottom. So this is just, you can either use a piece of high tensile with an insulating tube on it, or you can get wire that's meant for being buried underground or exposed. Doesn't have to be underground. That's got wire in it already with insulation. And so you just jumper and you use those split bolts to attach them to your hot wires. Okay? So then finally, the last thing is putting on your tensioners. So we showed this in the other videos, but this wire doesn't bend very sharp by hand. And the first thing you have to do in a tensioner is stick a piece of wire down in that hole so that it's tensioned. And so you're gonna have the easiest time if your wire is bent sharp. So you don't want to bend this wire to stick through that hole and just let it loop out, because it'll keep popping out. So what I do, and this is just the type of wire cutters I have, I usually just hook them on. I have a hole in the handle and I slide it in there, and then I just bend it so you get a nice sharp bend. So that's what I typically do. If you don't have pliers like that, or those are wire cutters, sorry, they're not pliers. You can use the hole in your, doesn't make quite as sharp of a bend, but you can use the hole in your tensioner. And if you get your tensioner going the right direction, find the other end of this wire, you can actually stick it in the hole it's supposed to go in, and then you have to go against the direction that it wants to spin. So right, this spins, it ratchets in one direction, and the other direction it locks. So you have to go against the locking direction, and you can just bend it sharp that way. So I bent it a little too much. But anyway, those are just some tips. Alright guys, hopefully this video has been helpful to you. Hopefully those tips have been helpful to you. And it'd be great if you'd go ahead and subscribe and hit that like button. But we appreciate you watching, and good luck with your project.